What's happening, everybody? This is Gayuka Musa, also known as Coach G, and I'd like to welcome you to this week's episode of the Friday Fix. Now, for today, we're going to do another Friday Q&A. This is where we take questions from viewers like you, and I answer them right here in this episode. Now, if you'd like to submit a question to be answered in a future Friday Q&A, add a comment below this video, or you can go to humancipate.com, click on the contact link, and submit the form there. Okay, so let's get to today's questions. Now, our first question is from Wale. And Wale would like to know, how do you reduce doubt and build trust in a relationship? Now, Wale, that's a fantastic question because trust is such a key ingredient in any meaningful relationship. Whether it's romantic or not, trust is just so important. So your question has two parts. It's about reducing doubt and building trust. I'm going to start with the trust part first, and I like to begin with a definition. Now, according to Merriam-Webster's, trust is defined as the belief in the reliability, truth, ability, or strength of someone or something. Now, when I think about that definition, the belief in the reliability, the truth, the ability, the strength, I think that that's a pretty good definition, but I also feel like trust is a little bit more than that, or can be more than that. It may not always be more than that, but I think it can be more than that. When I think about what's more than a belief, the word that comes to mind is knowing. A knowing is like a belief with the added benefit of experience. So it's not just an exercise in faith, but it's that transition to real knowledge that you know it's true because you've experienced it, you've lived it. And I think that trust can be both that belief journey in the reliability and the truth and strength of someone, and it can transition to that knowing of those very same things about the person that you're in a relationship with. When I think about my father and my stepmother, I mean, they've been married for decades. And one thing I would imagine is that neither one of them would describe their trust in the other as a belief. At this point in their lives, at this point in their relationships, they've been together and experienced so much that it's a knowing now, So that's how I would, kind of remix the definition of trust. I do think that at some points in your relationships, it is a belief, but it will grow, and it can grow to that knowing stage. So now that we have that definition of trust, let's talk about 4 ways to build trust in a relationship. Now, the first way, I'm gonna leverage a quote from Johann Wolfgang von Goethe, and his quote really speaks to what the first step to building trust is. And here's how his quote goes: "Trust yourself, then you will know how to live." And I think that's such a powerful quote because trusting yourself is so crucial. It's so crucial to be able to believe in your own reliability, your own truth, your own ability and strength. And it's important to do that with a level of consistency such that that transitions to a knowing of your own abilities, a knowing of your own reliability and truth and strength. So I think the first step is to trust yourself. Now, the second step is to be yourself, to really be your authentic self, so that the person you're in a relationship with knows exactly who is sitting across from the table from them. They know exactly who you are. They're not basing how they feel based on some representative version of you. They're really dealing with the real you. And I think that when you can be authentic and someone loves you and wants to be with you as your authentic self, it makes trust such an easier outcome of that process. Now, for the third step in building trust, I'm going to quote one of my favorite authors, Don Miguel Ruiz. And in his book, The 4 Agreements, one of the agreements is titled, "Be impeccable with your word." And I think that that's the third step, to really be impeccable with your word, to mean what you say and to do what you say you're going to do. When you operate in that way in a relationship, it lets your partner understand that they can believe and they can rely upon what it is you say and do. They can rely on the truth that those things are going to unfold the way that they would expect. Now, for the fourth part of building trust, I want you to love without strings. In our last episode of the Friday Fix, we talked about the power of unconditional love and how it can totally transform a relationship. If you haven't seen that episode, I would definitely encourage you to take a look at that one. So love without strings, love unconditionally, and that will build trust in your relationships. Now, as you as an individual work on these four aspects, I want you to recognize that building trust is a collaborative exercise. It requires that both people are doing these four things. Both people are trusting themselves and being impeccable with their word and loving each other unconditionally. So that's the trust part of this question. But Wale, you had another part to your question about reducing doubt. And when I think of doubt as being an uncertainty of things. Being uncertain about how a person feels, about what their motives are, if you can believe them. And I think that building trust ultimately goes to reducing some of that uncertainty. It goes to removing some of that doubt from the equation. As you strengthen your belief in a person's reliability and in their truth and strength and ability, and that moves towards a knowing, you're naturally reducing the doubt that would be associated with those very same things. So I think that's why I started with the trust part in this question. I think building trust ultimately does handle the other part of your question. It ultimately does reduce the doubt. Now, one last thing that I'd like to add is that an even faster way to reduce the doubt is to accept the truth that you're not in control. You're not in control of what other people do, what they say, of what they think, what they feel. And sometimes we have to, even though we know that to be the case, sometimes we really have to accept that that's the truth, that other people are going to do what they do, and we can love them regardless of what they do. So that's my solution to reducing doubt and building trust. I hope that answers your question, Wale. Thank you so much for sending that in. That was a great question. Now, our second question comes from Darlene. And Darlene would like to know, do you have some advice on choosing the partner that is best for a committed relationship? So I do have some advice on that, Darlene. Thank you for that question. I think it's a great question. Let me start with this. People are kind of fuzzy. And what I mean by that is that people, sometimes you'll be in a relationship and you may meet someone or date someone who's kind of deceptive. They may not always be honest with you. They may say they want to be in a committed relationship, and that you might find that that's not ultimately the case. But sometimes people, aside from being deceptive, sometimes people just don't really know what they want. They haven't gotten clear on what they want. And so I want you to keep that in mind when you're dealing with and meeting new people, that, sometimes people are just a little fuzzy. But what I'd like you to do to help remove some of that fuzziness, to help make your way through that fuzziness, is to do these three things. The first thing is I want you to get really clear about what it is you want, and specifically what you want in a relationship. What are the things that would really design that relationship as if it were your dream relationship? What are the components? What are the elements? What's the narrative? If you were to write down all the things you want and read them, would they read like a story that would really completely and thoroughly describe what it is you want to experience in a relationship? Now, the second thing I want you to do is to get really clear on what it is you value. So often in relationships, people tend to rely on their interests to be the things that determine if another person is right for them. And I think there's a huge difference between interests and values. I think that interests can change over time, whereas our values are really kind of inseparable from who we are. They're really core to who we are as people. And so I want you to get clear on what those non-negotiables are for you. What are the things that you value that are likely to be part of your life for as long as you're alive? And what I want you to do with these wants that you've defined and these values that you've gotten clear on is to discuss with your partner or the person you're dating, what are their wants and what are their values, and see if there's a match there. See if they have the same wants and values that you have, or at the very least, if they have wants and values that are compatible with your wants and values. Now, the third thing that I want you to do is I'd like you to define your terms. And here's what I mean by that. There are so many words that we use in our relationships. Words like marriage and commitment and monogamy and intimacy and love and respect. These are words that people all over the world use all the time when they're describing or talking about or thinking about their relationships. But the challenge here is that though these words are very commonplace, they're really kind of ubiquitous when it comes to describing loving relationships. Though they're that common, people sometimes have different definitions for these words that seem like they just have one singular meaning. Two people can have very different definitions of the word respect or the word intimacy. They can really think about those concepts very differently. And sometimes when people are in a relationship, they can have a conversation and both use these words and make the assumption that they're talking about the same thing, that they have the same meaning for those words. So what I want you to do is get really clear on what those words mean to you, and then I want you to check in with your partner or the person you're dating and see if they have the same meaning for that word, or if at the very least their meaning is compatible with your meaning. So those are the three things I want you to do to find a committed relationship, Darlene. And those three things, I've actually talked about those three things in greater depth in the free 10 questions ebook that you can get signing up right over there. So if you haven't signed up for that already, go ahead and fill out that form. You'll be notified whenever there's a new Friday Fix episode, and you'll get a free copy of the 10 questions ebook sent right to you. So do that if you haven't done that already. So thank you so much for that question, Darlene, and thank you all for watching. Again, if you'd like to submit a question to be answered on a future Friday Q&A, add it to the comments below, or you can go to humancipate.com and click the contact link and submit the form there. Thank you again for watching. This is Coach G reminding you to free your mind so your life can follow. Take care of each other, all right?